He woke with a jolt. His head swam in a dizzying haze. He was lying on a cold, hard floor, the only light a dim, pulsating red emanating from somewhere above. He tried to remember how he got there, but his mind was a blank canvas. Panic swelled in his chest. He was bound, his wrists and ankles held fast by rough, unforgiving ropes. He struggled against them, the fibers biting into his skin. Fear, raw and primal, washed over him. He strained to sit up, his eyes scanning the impenetrable darkness. Where was he? Who had taken him? The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of his own ragged breathing. He called out, his voice a hoarse croak. "Hello? Can anyone hear me?" Only the echo of his own terror answered back. Despair began to set in, a cold dread seeping into his bones. He was trapped, alone, and utterly helpless.
A voice deep and resonant boomed from above, slicing through the silence. "Greetings, contestants," it said, the tone laced with a chilling amusement. "Welcome to the arena." The word hung in the air, heavy with menace. "The rules are simple. Survive the night and you live. Fail and you die." The voice paused, letting the words sink in. "In this arena, you will face your worst nightmares. Beasts of unimaginable horror will hunt you, driven by an insatiable hunger."
Terror, cold and sharp, pierced him. He had no memory of this place, no idea how he came to be here, but one thing was clear. He was caught in a deadly game, one he never volunteered to play. With a deafening grinding sound, the floor began to descend. The red light intensified, bathing him in its bloody glow. He was being lowered into the arena, into the unknown. Below, he could make out the outlines of trees, twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching up like skeletal fingers. The air grew heavy, thick with the stench of decay and the musk of unknown beasts. He closed his eyes, bracing himself for the horror that awaited. As the platform reached the ground, blinding spotlights illuminated the arena. He found himself in a vast circular clearing, ringed by dense, impenetrable forest. Towering above, a massive dome of what looked like shimmering energy contained them. Other platforms were descending, each carrying a lone figure, bound and terrified. He was not alone in this nightmare. But would these strangers be allies or competitors in the fight for survival? He didn't have long to wait to find out. From the shadows of the forest, a guttural growl echoed, sending a fresh wave of fear through him. The hunt had begun.
A blood-curdling shriek pierced the night. One of the other contestants, a young woman, was dragged screaming into the darkness by a creature of nightmare. It was a blur of razor-sharp claws and teeth, its eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. Panic erupted. The contestants scattered, their bonds miraculously gone, each of them desperate to escape the same fate.
He scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. The ground seemed to vibrate with the movement of unseen predators. He ran blindly, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The air was filled with the sounds of pursuit, the crashing of branches, the guttural growls of unseen pursuers, the terrified screams of the hunted. He didn't dare look back. He didn't need to. He could feel the hot breath of the predators on his neck, smell the stench of their putrid flesh. He stumbled over a fallen log, crashing to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Pain shot through his ankle, a searing agony that stole his breath. He looked up, expecting to see the gaping maw of some monstrous creature descending upon him. Instead, he saw her.
Get up. We have to keep moving.
She was young, athletic, her face streaked with dirt and fear, but her eyes held a steely glint of determination. He hesitated, unsure if he could trust her, but the sound of approaching growls decided him. He grasped her hand, letting her pull him to his feet.
I'm Sarah. We're in this together now.
They ran through the nightmarish landscape, the forest floor littered with the remains of the less fortunate. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood. Sarah, he learned her name was Sarah, moved with a fierce grace, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. She seemed to know these woods, or at least how to survive in them. He, on the other hand, was just trying to keep up, his lungs burning, his injured ankles screaming with every step. They came to a clearing, the mangled corpse of a monstrous creature lying in the center. Its blood, black and viscous, pooled on the ground, reflecting the eerie light from the dome above. They paused for a moment, catching their breath, the silence almost as unnerving as the previous cacophony.
We need to find a weapon. We can't keep running forever.
He nodded, his gaze sweeping the clearing. There had to be something they could use. Their survival depended on it. The night wore on. An endless cycle of running, hiding and fighting. They found crude weapons, a broken branch sharpened to a point, a jagged rock, anything that might give them a fighting chance. They encountered other contestants, some driven mad by fear, others desperate for safety in numbers, but the creatures were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless.
With each encounter, our hope dwindled. We had witnessed firsthand the brutal efficiency of the creatures, the ease with which they tore through flesh and bone. The arena floor was now a gruesome tapestry of blood and viscera. The stench of death was overpowering, yet we clung to each other, two souls bound together by terror and a shared will to survive.
As the first rays of dawn pierced through the gaps in the dome, painting the arena in a sickly yellow light, a strange silence fell. The creatures, as if on some unseen cue, retreated back into the shadows, melting away like nightmares into the fabric of the forest. The remaining contestants, a mere handful of the original number, emerged from their hiding places, their bodies battered, their spirits broken.
He collapsed onto the blood-soaked ground, his chest heaving, his entire body screaming for respite. He looked at me, my face pale and streaked with dirt and blood, but my eyes still burning with that tenacious spark of life. We had survived the night. We had endured the unimaginable.
A wave of relief, so profound it bordered on euphoria, washed over him, but it was a fleeting feeling.
Congratulations, it said, the word dripping with sarcasm. You have survived the night.
He clung to Sarah, his heart still pounding in his chest. The ordeal was over, they were safe, or so he thought.
But the game is far from over.
The ground began to tremble. From the center of the arena, a fissure appeared, widening with a sickening, grinding sound. He watched in horror as the earth split open, revealing a gaping chasm that seemed to stretch down into the very depths of hell.
Let the next stage begin.
He looked around at the other survivors, their faces etched with the same dawning horror that he felt. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. He didn't know what fresh horrors awaited them in that abyss, what new nightmares they would be forced to confront. But one thing was certain, there would be no escape.
He grasped my hand, his grip tight. We had survived the night, but the dawn brought with it a new terror, a deeper despair. We were trapped in this nightmare, and the worst was yet to come. He looked into my eyes, seeing his own fear reflected back at him. We didn't know what the future held, but we knew we would face it together. For in this arena of death, the only solace was the company of another soul, another heartbeat in the face of oblivion.